In my previous video, I made the claim that analog control was designed for Super Mario 64, and credit where it's due, it was revolutionary in making you feel like you're moving through the virtual worlds. So much so that everybody took notice, leading to the development of PlayStation's DualShock controller and Ape Escape, which broke down the boundaries and defined the future of video game controls. Alright, before we can get into the game, we've got to get the obligatory history lesson out of the way, but don't worry, I'll be quick. So, it's the mid-90s, game dimensions are evolving, and suddenly your traditional controller just won't cut it. It was a very close race to get that first joystick onto a gamepad, with Sega and Nintendo continuing their storied rivalry. Unlike the Saturn launching prematurely to beat PlayStation onto the scene in '94, Nintendo barely squeezed out their N64 and Super Mario in June of '96, a mere fortnight before Sega would officially announce their 3D gamepad controller. Now, of course, we all know who the winner was there, but I did want to mention this because I find it interesting. Had Sega dropped the first joystick for a home console, would history be written any differently? It's difficult to say really, with PlayStation playing catch-up in 1997 with the dual analog controller, which boasted not one, but two titties to tickle your characters with. And with the addition of built-in rumble functionality coming the following year, the controller was repackaged as the DualShock. Hell yeah, move over Nintendo, no more needing to decide between saving your game or vibration. Man, what a time to be alive. It was another substantial revolution from what is no doubt the most influential decade in the industry. Immediately developers adopted the new controller, which provided much more precise movement for not just characters, but also the camera, as we were still learning to move through these 3D environments. But beyond that, it wasn't exactly necessary. Now sure, there were some games that played infinitely better thanks to the dual analog sticks, the first-person shooters being an obvious example and a clear-cut winner for why we take these controls for granted all these years later, because, well, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. But the breadwinner during the 5th generation was still your cartoony collectathon platformer games. So, what is Ape Escape, and why is it so special? You know why? Because it's the first and only PS1 game that requires the use of a DualShock controller. This is because rather than actions responding to presses of the face buttons, these motions need to be created by physically swinging around the right stick. You've got to actually pull back to fire slingshots and even control multiple entities on screen at once. It was out of this world. And I've never played it. For real. PlayStation license revoked. So I'm finally going to check this one out today so that I can finally see what all the fuss is about, but more so, we get to really put the DualShock controller through its paces. I've also had this game on the mind since Astrobot's Game of the Year performance, which featured the first original representation from this franchise in well over a decade. I'm not gonna lie, now that I've actually played the original, I'm hoping we can see more of this very soon. Direct from Sony Computer Entertainment's Japan studio in June of 1999, I present to you Ape Escape, and Jesus Christ, this intro is absolute nonsense, and I love it. It gets you stoked before the title even appears. Now, of course, I'm playing the European version, and it must be mentioned that this game is just riddled with regional differences from the cover artwork, names for some of the levels, and I'm sure plenty of other stuff as well. The most egregious thing, though, is the voice acting. I'm going to give you a quick comparison just to show you what I'm talking about.
Hey, Spike, do you think the professor finished his time machine?
He said he's almost done.
Hey, Spike, did the professor finish the time station yet? Are we gonna get to go back in time?
He said he'd be finished with it today. Let's go.
Spectre, aren't you the little monkey that performed at the amusement park?
What? He's that cute white monkey that everyone loved.
Well, I don't remember. What I can say is that I've acquired distinguished knowledge and great power.
Spectre, oh yes. You're the monkey that performs at the amusement park.
What? He's that cute little monkey that everyone loves to come and see? But how?
Yes, that's right. I stumbled onto this incredible invention of yours, this peak point helmet, and it's given me remarkable knowledge and great powers.
Look, call me biased if you want, but the European VA just fits so much better in my opinion. It's cartoony, yet authentic, while much of the US dialogue comes across like a bad fan dub trying way too hard. So, story time. Scary Spectre puts on a helmet that makes him hyper-intelligent and commands all the other monkeys to take over the world. This leads them to the Professor's laboratory where shit is going haywire and zaps Spike and our friend back through time. Our friend's name is Buzz in Europe, but he's better known as Jake in the US version and every subsequent re-release, so that's just what I'm gonna go with. So, using some of the Professor's handy-dandy tools, it's our job to recover all of the apes that have escaped. We get a real quick intro level and bang, there you go. 5 minutes in and we're ready to start the game. God, I miss that. At surface level, the game's got a great aesthetic and the music slaps, man. It goes so hard with a lot of drum and bass inspired tracks, which is just the perfect accompaniment to any situation. So what I'm saying is that you can expect to hear this in the background of all my future videos. The basic premise is that each level has a bunch of filthy shitflingers running around, and you've got to catch enough of them to move on to the next level. We get a nice flyover at the start of every stage, which is always nice. Really takes me back seeing this, as we didn't really get the opportunity to view worlds from alternate angles back in the day. Then we set off to catch monkeys until our quota is met to move on to the next area. This I need to get out of the way as soon as possible. Why must we get booted from the level once we're done? I was only just complaining about this with Mario 64, kicking you out with every single star that you collect. And while Ape Escape isn't quite that obnoxious with it, it is still frustrating getting late into a run and finding two of these bastards next to each other, grabbing one, and then being forced to exit the level, as it's only bloating the time you're gonna have to waste returning later on. If you're going for the hundo, that is. And we do need to come back for a second visit, as almost every level will present new solutions returning at a later time. I don't mind that so much, but at least give me the option, like in Spyro, by providing me an exit if I'd like to use it. That might be my biggest gripe out of the gate, but also my only one, given that it's just so easy to put it aside and get lost in the cozy chaos of it all. The apes each have their own unique personalities that you can track in your journal. They go through a range of emotions, some are easier to catch than others, but most importantly is the colour of their pants, with yellow being your garden variety monkey. Greens can see you coming to get them, meaning that you have to be really sneaky. Blue pants are quite flighty and often take off once you enter their vicinity. And listen, if you see any of these guys come to school in a black trench coat and shades, well... actually, hang on, let me just check something real quick. Actually, Columbine had just happened prior to this game releasing, so... never mind. Joke over. It's a really unique way of handling collectibles that don't just have the things sat there waiting to be picked up or given to you for completing arbitrary tasks. Here, the task is to collect the apes by any means necessary, which is where the DualShock controller comes in. Gradually we're drip-fed a variety of different gadgets, starting off with the baton and net, which is used to actually unescape those damn apes. But slowly we're introduced to items like the slingshot, which can be used to press buttons from a distance, as well as for picking off pesky primates that are out of reach. We've got a hula hoop, which allows us to sprint, and a propeller for longer, higher jumps. But listen, it's how we actually use the entire toolkit in unison, which is what makes this game so revolutionary. As I mentioned, this is the only game on the PlayStation 1 that demands dual stick control. You can see that by pressing any of the 4 face buttons, we can select between different items in our inventory, almost like a primitive weapon wheel of sorts. It's super efficient, though as you unlock more and more items, you will need to manage your quick select from the pause menu. With the face buttons occupied, jump is on both right shoulder buttons, which does take some getting used to, I'm not gonna lie. Using the left stick to run around leaves the D-pad available for camera control, along with L2, which gives us a first-person view to look around and makes using the slingshot a lot more accurate. But all the magic happens here on the right stick, and magic is the perfect analogy, because I don't think I've ever seen a game that utilises this in such a fun, inventive fashion before, or since. By swinging the right stick, we can swing the baton to knock down runners, sweep them up into the net, we can scan the environment for our next catch and pull it back to snipe them from a distance with the slingshot. Rotating the stick charges both the hula hoop and the hover ability, and man, this is just exceptionally fun. It's kind of hard to describe, honestly. It sounds like overkill explaining it, but really, that's only because this isn't the standard that we're used to, and once you master everything together, you'll find that these simple levels have such a great flow that encourages mastery. Over the years, there really haven't been many games that took full advantage of the 3D movement that the right stick is capable of, outside of just having smooth camera control. The only few games I can really think of off the top of my head that really utilise the right stick would be the Fight Night games, which has you controlling the hands of the boxer while you punch, and in similar vein, the Skate franchise utilising a flick system that created the most authentic, true-to-life skateboarding experience in gaming history, which has since been repeated in spiritual successors Skater XL and Session. And listen, I'm sure there are other examples, you know, there were plenty of twin-stick shooters over the years, but those are just the 2 examples that come to mind first for me. Remember, we didn't really begin to see motion focused on the right hand until Nintendo's Wii in 2007, which really cemented the concept, allowing not just direction, but also action. And it doesn't end there. Spike also gets to commandeer a few vehicles on his journey, such as the rowboat, which has you controlling both paddles independently. This is fucking crazy, dude. It's legit just like a Wii game 8 years before the system launched. And look, while it does take some getting used to, it's really cool to see just how deep the control scheme gets, implemented into different stages, giving them each their own unique little moments like this. Later on, we also get our hands on a tank, which maps each of the treads to a different stick. If you've ever played Sly 2 Band of Thieves, then you may be familiar with what this feels like. It's pretty cool and quite accurately simulates what it's like to drive a tank. Well, I assume so anyway. I don't have experience with anything like that. Or do I? This, my friends, is the PlayStation Analog Joystick Controller. It released in April of 1996, meaning that it actually predates both the dual analog and DualShock controllers respectively, technically making this Sony's first ever analog controller. Now, of course, it's primarily designed for, battle simulation and flying type games, but can it play Ape Escape? Well, that's a funny story. I was under the impression that it could, given what I'd read online, and granted, there isn't really much to be read about this thing to begin with. Unfortunately though, because of unknown forces, I wasn't able to get it working to show off in the video. I even recruited help from a guy known as Cold Kennels, who is not only a dope-ass freestyle skater, because of course he is, but also he is the only person I could find online with any substantial knowledge on the subject of compatibility for this thing. So, yeah, it was a failed mission, guys. We might have to come back to this one another time with a more complete review of the joystick controller itself, but for now, I just want to get this damn monkey off my back and move on with the video. So, shout out to Cold Kennels for being super helpful. Cheers, mate. Anyway, back to the video. After the first few worlds, we see that Jake has gotten himself caught up in Spectre's mess, and now he wants to verse us in a foot race. Yeah, our first boss is a little platformer foot race. Hey, I'm not against it, it just caught me off guard is all. It's a pure test of your movement skills utilising the gadgets at your disposal, but if you were hoping for a more traditional boss fight, well, there are special enemies hidden on certain courses that serve this purpose very well. Going back to complete certain stages with new gadgets really expands on the different locations, as you'll often find areas previously undiscovered and brimming with more of the fun, bouncy, mental monkey action that the game excels at. Like I mentioned, it can be lame doing the sprint to the end just to grab that one ape that the game forced you to miss, but for those of you nerds who like a challenge, well, each level once fully cleared offers a time attack mode. Grab a set number of apes as fast as you can. It doesn't matter which ones or what order, as long as it's fast. And man, this really does a lot for the replayability, as it tests your knowledge of the layouts and locations of every item, which serves as a really satisfying reward, much more satisfactory than just returning to an empty level, like a lot of other games from this time period seem to suffer from. And if you still need more to do, then collecting these special tokens unlocks bonus mini-games for a change of pace, all of which are designed around the DualShock. We've got a twin-stick shooter, which is surprisingly decent, a boxing mode, hey, like Fight Night and Wii Sports. But, this one is maybe not as memorable. A decent proof of concept though, I'll give it that. And lastly is Ski Kids, which has us racing the other characters around some simple courses that once again uses both sticks mapped to different legs, meaning that you can really get nitty gritty with the accuracy of your turns and speed. It's quite incredible really, and actually a lot of fun. I mean, this could be a standalone game in its own right. To be honest, I'm surprised it's actually not. You know, if we had Klonoa Beach Volleyball, then why not this? It's like everywhere I look, this game is just pure greatness. The visuals and music, the general concept of control and the unimaginable execution of it. But then also just all the little details, character personalities, complex level design neatly packaged in easy to understand stages, and just the sheer abundance of love put into every single aspect of the game. Even into the later stages, it continues to innovate. One of the last gadgets that we get our hands on is the RC car. Now, I'd previously seen monkeys stuck in places far too claustrophobic for Spike, thinking, how on earth am I gonna get him in there? Well, you're not. Instead, send in the car to flush the little bastard out and bang, catch that critter. I don't think I've ever seen something like this in a game before, where both the player character and an additional character are playable simultaneously like this. Look, I can give you plenty of examples of mirror opponents, but that's not what this is. Spike still moves with the left stick, but the right stick steers the remote controlled car independently, creating a really obscure yet fascinating type of control setup. And to all of my excitement, the endgame dissolves the monkey quota, adopting the much preferred pick it all fucking up format, which for the larger levels this late into the game, like the castle or the amusement park, works wonders in creating an unstoppable roller coaster of enjoyable, intuitive action that very quickly outstays its welcome. Yeah, come on, you didn't really think I was gonna be all sunshine and rainbows for the entire video, did you? Because look, as much as I continue to really love this game despite the increased challenge of technical, verging on cruel platforming and the fussy 90s AI refusing to cooperate with me, it was still a phenomenal game. But man, the ending really suffered for some reason. I mean, firstly, it's nice to have some bigger stages finally. More open, with more to do, more freedom, but we also get two entire huge areas basically rolled into one map by the end, which is just too much. And a significant amount of this area involves some sort of complex platforming, which thankfully, we do get a checkpoint each time we enter a new room, but I also want to make sure that I collect every monkey along the way, because the thought of having to climb through all of this a second time makes me sick to my stomach. So, allow me to introduce this little the bane of my fucking existence. Here we have an ape that, rather than escaping, prefers the comfort of being locked in a cage. This cage has 4 points of entry, which we need to send in the RC car to flush him out. Now, there are wide gaps in the floor here, so you've got to drive carefully. The only way we can get a good look at everything is to jump up onto the ceiling, so let's do that really quick. Oh, look at this little shit, he just doesn't seem to want to leave. I chase him around and around. There isn't really any strategy to this, as they just decide to leave whenever they damn well please, but oh god damn it, he just runs back in before I even got a chance to get over there and catch him. The car doesn't work like the water net, which allows you to catch apes from a distance while swimming, which is another pretty incredible thing this game excels at, by the way. No, if you're on dry land, your only option is to get all up in their personal space to swipe them into the net. This makes for many examples of chase scenes that can be a little more tedious than they maybe should be, but for this example in particular, it's just a lot to focus on all at once. Driving the car to scare the monkey, driving Spike into position to catch it, or to even see what's going on in the first place, and you're totally exposed the entire time. This fucker has a gun and can shoot you through the mesh floor, meaning that you've got just too much shit on your plate trying to juggle to do all of this. Little slut just loves being in the damn cage. He dips in and out with no rhyme or reason just to fuck with me, as if the game has gained sentience, and there is no way to close the exits of the cage to prevent him from going back in. It's like scrambling through the house trying to get the cat into its carrier for a damn vet visit. I can tell you right now that once I catch this son of a bitch, he'll be going to the vet. To be fucking euthanized. This was a nightmare. Genuine conniption-causing moment in the final level that almost traumatized me, but thankfully, I got him and struggled forward, climbing to the very top to face Spectre and his giant robot. Now, unfortunately, I also had some problems with this part of the level, not because of difficulty or anything like that, but rather my misunderstanding of the instructions and the game not really helping me out at all. So, this fight takes place from Spectre's POV as we try to avoid being shot at by the lasers. Now, I was under the impression here that I had no other option but to use the slingshot to attack this thing, given that when I tried to run up and whack it, nothing really appeared to happen. You know, the game didn't give me any sort of feedback. So that's my fault, I guess, as I understand now, you can actually hit this thing with the baton just fine. But because of that misunderstanding, I resorted to using the slingshot, which has 3 types of ammunition. Your basic crumbs that do absolutely nothing, but we've also got bombs and lock-on missiles, the latter 2 of which require you to pick up ammunition in order to be able to use them. Now, this stuff is scarce, and after a brutal lot of platforming, I didn't have much ammo on me, but I tried it and got feedback that it had worked. So, under the assumption that this was my only method of attack, I was up shit creek, because without special ammunition, it's completely worthless. So this resulted in me running around waiting for ammo to spawn in. You know, like a normal boss fight, but it just didn't happen. I'd occasionally get a cookie to recover a hit point, but nothing otherwise. Man, I was so confused, and for real, I feel massively silly now, knowing that I could have just used the baton the entire fight. But despite that, where was the fail-safe for this scenario? Usually in a situation like this, you might get some kind of prompt, like an audio cue from the professor saying something along the lines of, "Hit it with the stick, you empty-headed clown." But there was nothing like that here. So yes, this took me ages of time wasting until the game started spawning me ammunition. Finally, after all of that, Phase 2 was a breeze and Spectre was history. Almost. You've got to grab all 204 apes before you can unlock the true ending to the game, but I'll leave that for you to discover yourself, because despite encountering a few hiccups towards the end, I could not recommend this game more. Ape Escape is like no other. Its original, innovative gameplay loop is standalone one of the best things that I've ever played on the system, or any system for that matter, in my almost 30 years of gaming. There is just so much to see here, even more to master. It's kick-ass and keeps you pumped the entire way through, and though there are a few little annoying things, you know, I mentioned the RC car in the last level, the forced backtracking, there was also a couple times that the retro graphics were a little confusing. I mean, tell me that this doesn't look like I can climb onto it. But look, all in all, this is a gem. Iconic in every way imaginable. So, Ape Escape gets a damn strong 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's fucking good, dudes. Definitely check it out. Just the unusual methods developers use to squeeze every element out of the DualShock is astonishing, and it's very much the godfather to games like Astrobot, which centre around creatively implementing new ways of using the controller. So go play it. The original goes for a few dollary-doos these days, but it also had a few ports over the years, most notably the PSP port Apes on the Loose, which... hang on a minute, how does that work? The PlayStation Portable's only got one stick. Okay, let's quickly check it out. Well, it looks and sounds familiar, of course, aside from the voice acting. It seems like they've just gone with the US version for this release. Whatever, all I want to know is how they pulled this off without two sticks. And the answer is... they cut its balls off. Okay, that's maybe a little dramatic. Listen, it's still gonna be the same game overall, and it's a fucking awesome game, so that's a good thing. But it doesn't have the feature that defines the original, which ultimately defeats the purpose in my opinion. So now gadgets are assigned to the face buttons with jump on X, reducing one slot on our quick select. And the quick select isn't really quick at all because pressing the button swaps and uses that item simultaneously, which can be really annoying not being able to set up your moves correctly. This also leads to it being less accurate when trying to scoop up the little shits. I don't really want to play through this entire thing because I don't see much point to it, but man, I just can't imagine how much of a ball ache those later stages could possibly be, given the more restrictive controls. Not to mention that the bigger the level, the more loading you're gonna face. It honestly feels like this was the original version, because the newer PSP just got its ass handed to it by the PlayStation 1 from almost 10 years earlier. The game just runs so much smoother, loads instantly, and innovated so much that, aside from maybe the improved draw distance on the portable, this version just can't beat the D-Master allegations, I'm afraid. But thankfully, I believe the original version is also available on the PS4 and 5 in the retro games section, so look, you've really got no excuses not to play this game. Listen, don't be stupid like me, and tell yourself that you'll play through it eventually, because we both know that you're a lying piece of shit, okay? No, turn off the video. Well, be sure to like and subscribe first. Then turn the video off and go play it now. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. I'm Square-Eyed Jack and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.